Chào mừng quý vị quay trở lại với phần cuối cùng của chương trình Đồng Tiền Thông Minh ngày hôm nay với chủ đề thảo luận bàn về quỹ đầu tư dạng mở với anh Avinash Satwalekar là tổng giám đốc đầu tư của công ty quản lý quỹ đầu tư chứng khoán Vietcombank. Welcome back, Avinash.
Thank you.
So, could you give us some examples of the open-end fund developments in other markets that have some similarities compared to the Vietnam's market?
Sure. Open-end funds as a concept itself has been around for a long time, right? I mean, back in the United States of America, you had this concept start out originally in 1924, which is a long time ago. Now, did it start out exactly like a mutual fund, like we know it today, or an open-ended fund like we know today? No. But the idea was that you pooled your assets together. You had different investors that came together, and then one person managed it. So the concept came up in the early 1900s. Now, if you look more towards countries in Asia or closer, that has been the case even here. So if you look at, let's say, Korea, started it in 1970. You look at Thailand, 1977. You look at China, which came along a little later, but 1991. Now, in China's case, if you look at it, right now, if we fast forward 10 years from when they started, I'd say more than 10 years. It'd have to be 20 years. Once they started, it is now 6% of GDP is the total assets in the open-end industry, fund industry. So when you look at it as a percentage of GDP, all the countries that are around Vietnam, on average, it is about 8% of GDP. And some countries it's extremely high, like Singapore, for example, where it's north of 50% of GDP. Is the size of the open-end fund industry. Or then on the smaller side, let's say like Indonesia or the Philippines, it's 2.5% to 3% of GDP. So when you're looking at Vietnam, it's in the early stages right now.
Sure. So if I'm an investor, why should I go for the VCBF Tactical Balance Fund, like you just mentioned?
Sure. When you're looking at, VCBF, we mentioned earlier, was a joint venture, right?
Yeah.
So we have the benefit of two very strong sponsors. Now, why is that important? You asked, one of your questions earlier was talking about what are the advantages that Franklin Templeton brings to VCBF. In addition to all those advantages, what does Vietcombank bring to? What that brings to us is access to local knowledge. And we have access that is tremendously beneficial across the board compared to anybody else. So I think having two strong parents is extremely important. What it also is, why is it important? Because they have both committed to building this business. And what that means is that this is not kind of a short-term thing for either one, either Vietcombank or Franklin Templeton. It's a long-term business plan. What that means is we have all the resources, we have all the capital, we have anything that we need at our disposal to make sure that this fund is successful and make sure the industry is successful. Now, the second part of this is we have an incredibly experienced investment team. At the end of the day, you're putting money with a fund. You want to make sure that the people doing it are well qualified.
Sure.
The total experience, investment experience at VCBF is 85 years. The average experience is north of 10 years. So we have a tremendously experienced team investing in Vietnam. Next we have and this is kind of the crux of why it is important, why is it different, is our investment process. And we focus on a bottom-up research process, and we look to the long term for making our investments. And on the operational side, we talked about the systems that we can bring in from Franklin Templeton. What I'd also like to mention is the fact that we have all our investor assets sitting in a custody bank, and our custody bank is Deutsche Bank. So the assets are extremely safe. They're completely separated from the fund manager. So it is not as though the fund manager has access to the funds and can do whatever they want. It is only once we've decided how we're going to invest that we get access to those funds that are sitting with the custody. And then lastly, what I'd say is our track record.
All right.
We've been doing this now since 2005. Franklin Templeton joined the joint venture in 2008. And we've been investing in the Vietnamese markets for, like I mentioned, since the mid-90s. So our track record is incredible. I mean, we manage money for a lot of institutional clients, and we've had a very strong track record. And in recognition of that track record, I should mention that the World Finance magazine in London awarded us, VCBF, as the best investment manager for 2013.
What is the expected returns of this VCBF Tactical Balance Fund?
The way I'd look at expected return is you look at our benchmark. Our benchmark for the fund is an average of the VN index and the 10-year government bond. So what we do is, since we're investing half and half on average, you want to look at what those two different asset classes have returned for you in the past. If you look at the VN index in particular, the last couple of years have been, I mean, other than this previous 2013, have been tough.
All right.
But if you look at 2013, the index was up nearly 22%, which is an incredible return, especially when you look at any of the other emerging markets in Asia.
Right. So do you have any special investment tours to help the investors?
If I want to buy that house in 5 years or 10 years, you work it out backwards. This is what it will likely cost me. How much do I need to invest? So what we've done is we've created a systematic investment plan, or SIP for short. And what that means is every month you put aside a little amount of money, whatever it is. Now let's say at the end of the year you get a big bonus. You can always take a portion of that bonus and put it into your investments again. But at the very least, you must, on a monthly basis, put aside some money. And that is the easiest part, because we help set that up for you, and you can do that on a monthly basis, and it doesn't affect you.
So what should should investor be worried when the NAV of the fund goes down? What do they do at that time?
Should investors be worried? It's the way we look at investing. We do a lot of research on our companies before we make an investment. And the way we do research is we look at what is the strength of this company? What is the long-term potential of this company? And then if I know what the long-term potential is, what is this company worth? Once I decide this company is worth X amount of Dong, then we have to compare it to what does the market think it is worth right now, because it is trading on the exchange. And if there's a difference, so if our value is much higher, then we start buying this. So if we think a company is worth 100 Dong, today it is trading at 80 Dong.
All right.
It's cheaper than what I think it's worth, we should be buying it. And we will be buying it. Now, for whatever reason, right, GDP growth rate numbers go down, or there's some political issue somewhere, or there's something, the market goes down. This company's value has now gone from 80 Dong to 50 Dong per share. First question we have to ask is, has our value assessment changed? Do we still think it is worth 100 Dong? If we say the answer is yes to that, then I'm getting a chance now to buy something much cheaper than it was earlier.
Sure.
So we would be buying more of that. Now, you recall in your earlier question, you talked about the tool, the SIP tool that I was mentioning. One of the key advantages of that tool is that every month when you're putting aside money, you have a concept, what we call is Dong cost averaging.
Okay.
So in our example, let's take an example. If when you're investing 1,000 Dong, the NAV for the fund is 100. That means you're buying 10 units of the fund. Now next month, like you said, the NAV goes down. Let's say, like for example, the NAV of the fund is now 50 instead of 100. You're still, because you're on the SIP, you're investing your 1,000 Dong. But now instead of buying 10 units, you buy 20 units.
Okay.
So as a function, you are always buying something when it is cheaper. and buying less of it when it gets more expensive. And that's the way we look at it. So if the NAV has gone down, I think you have to be in a position to say, is this the right fund manager? And that's why we want our investors to think about long term, not think about every quarter, every month, every year kind of thing.
Okay.
If you're fine with investing with VCBF, then you should not be worrying about any one particular month or year going down.
All right, good to know. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very
We
much.
look forward to the developments of open-end fund in Vietnam.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là những chia sẻ của anh Avinash Satwalekar, là tổng giám đốc và giám đốc đầu tư của công ty quản lý quỹ đầu tư chứng khoán Vietcombank. Đến đây thì chương trình sẽ được khép lại. Một lần nữa quý vị có thể xem lại chương trình này trên trang web đồng tiền thông minh fbnc.com hoặc là facebook.com/đồng tiền thông minh. Thân ái chào tạm biệt và hẹn gặp lại quý vị trong những chương trình kỳ sau.